Jay Donaker served 16 years as the mayor of Reidsville. Reese Pirtle, longtime police chief in Eden, as well as a former county commissioner. This race stands out for one thing in particular, its civility. You won't find any attack ads here. You won't even find any harsh words between the two candidates. Republican Reese Pirtle and Democrat Jay Donaker have different views on the issues, but share one thing in common: mutual respect. You consider yourselves friends?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Because he was a police chief. And
yeah, police chief. Absolutely.
Stuff. So you've worked with this guy at some point in time?
I have, and successfully. I'm sure he's a good person, good family person, much like I am.
Do you consider your opponent to be a friend of yours?
Yeah, I mean, he was a mayor when I was the chairman of the board. We worked on some projects together.
At the end of the day, on November 9th, after the election, both my opponent and I will still be living here. We will still be members of the different chambers, and we'll still be crossing paths with each other. And we both respect each other very well, very much so.
When we see each other at an event, we're going to shake hands and talk, ask how each other's family's doing. I think there's just a political divide.
In a time of divisive partisan politics, Pirtle and Donaker offer Rockingham County voters something different. That doesn't mean the two candidates don't disagree on the major issues of the day. Where do you stand on the abortion issue?
I look at it as a privacy issue.
As a Republican, as a pro-life Republican, it's something that I was glad to see Roe versus Wade overturned.
There is a relationship between the medical caregiver and a woman that I don't think the nose of the government should be stuck in.
I believe that that abortion should be outlawed unless it's a case of rape or incest or to save the life of a mother.
Would you get rid of the 20-week if you could?
Probably not. I would probably be an advocate for less restrictions on abortions up to 24. Because I think we all know as scientists that if there's a fetus that's 24 weeks old, that there's a good chance it could be viable if it was delivered at that point.
The two candidates also disagree on Medicaid expansion.
That's one of those that I was opposed to it. My concerns are, 90-10. What happens if the 90% goes away? Are we willing to end that particular benefit? Adding 600,000 people to a healthcare system.
Where do you stand on Medicaid expansion?
It's very clear we need to expand Medicaid. We are already paying for Medicaid. One of our hospitals here in Rockingham County went bankrupt and had to be reorganized, and now it's UNC Rockingham.
Both men also take different views on legalizing marijuana, both for recreational and medical use.
That's another one that I struggle with. I think there is there is a demonstrated need. I do believe that exists. I'm just not sure that I like the way that it is being dispersed.
And how about recreational marijuana?
I'm not a fan of that at all.
Why not?
I think it's a gateway drug, Bill. I think it is a gateway to, especially with youth, that's where they start, but that's not where they finish.
Recreational and medical marijuana, where do you stand?
I think the people of North Carolina should answer that question. I think a referendum during an election should be put up there and let the voters speak.
So you favor a referendum for both?
Yes.
Both candidates say they support sports betting in North Carolina. One of the other issues that will likely come before the legislature again is sports betting. How do you stand on that?
I voted for sports betting in the last time it was on the floor.
At this point, yes for sports betting, no for any promotional activities or contractors contracted with state taxpayer money to promote gambling.
You like your chances, though.
Well, let's put it this way. I'm going to continue to do what I think I've always done as a county commissioner. It's important to me to represent all the people. I've never once asked what somebody's party affiliation was when they come in my office when I was a police chief or called me when I was a county commissioner. I didn't care, and I don't care now.
This district favors your opponent, is that right?
Absolutely. I'm the underdog.
And when you say...
No pun intended as a veterinarian.
Assume that you have some visions of winning this race. Why?
Well, people have known me for 35 years, both as a veterinarian, city mayor, social activist, successful businessman.
2 years ago, voters in Rockingham County sent Jerry Carter to represent them in Raleigh. The pastor from Reidsville passed away last year at the age of 66. Bill O'Neill, WXII 12 News.